What's up, Taurus? It's your girl D here with 8th House Energy, here to bring you a Mercury retrograde reading as well as the Sagittarius lunar eclipse. I hope all is well in the Taurus community. I hope you guys enjoyed Taurus season. Taurus season was definitely interesting for me, being as though you guys are my opposite polarity. I'm Scorpio. So I definitely got a lot out of Taurus season. Hopefully you did as well. Hopefully you enjoyed your birthday. Happy birthday to the this is now Gemini season, but I want to say a belated happy birthday to the Taurus Gemini cuspers who celebrated their birthday this past week. At the time of this recording, it is May 20th. So for those of you who had the birthday the week of May 20th to Thursday, May 20th. So from the 16th, which was Sunday, up until the 19th. Yeah, the 19th, because Gemini season began on the 20th, which is today. So, happy birthday, guys. And happy belated to those who celebrated during Taurus season. So, we are doing a Mercury retrograde reading, as well as Sagittarius lunar eclipse. We're doing it this way because the Mercury retrograde is in the house of Gemini. The lunar eclipse is in the house of Sag. All right, and so they're opposite polarities. The opposite polarity of Sagittarius is Gemini. The opposite polarity of Taurus is Scorpio. The opposite polarity of Aries is Libra. So when we have activity going on in the opposite polarities, they do intertwine and work together in a way. So I'm going to talk to you about how that works. So first of all, Mercury is the planet that rules communication. Okay, any type of communication as far as processing of information, that is ruled by, Mercury rules Gemini, because Gemini is in the third house of the Zodiac. So if we draw a Zodiac wheel, like this is a chart for everybody. Everybody has a chart that has 12 houses. Each sign sits in every house. So everybody has every sign in their chart. So because Aries is the first house, normally what we would start with is Aries, then Taurus, then Gemini, then Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and then Pisces. That's normally how it would go. Those are normally the signs assigned to the numbered houses. But if you are a sun sign Taurus, when we draw a chart for you, we're going to put whatever your sun sign is in the first house, right? So if you were a sun sign Scorpio, we will put Scorpio here, and then whatever comes next after Scorpio, which is Sagittarius, then Capricorn, then Aquarius, then Pisces. So because you are Taurus, we are putting Taurus here. So after Taurus comes Gemini. So for you, Gemini is going to be in your second house. Mercury is in Gemini, and Gemini is your second house, right? So we have Gemini, then we have Cancer, then we have Leo, then we have Virgo, then we have Libra, then we have Scorpio, then we have Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, the lunar eclipse is in Sag. So for you, it's going to be in your 8th house. So if you draw a circle and you divide it into 12 slices, each slice represents a particular area of your life. We always know that Sagittarius, which is here for you, is going to be the opposite polarity, which is the number 2. So the number 2 house is always the opposite polarity of the 8th house. The number 1 house is always the opposite polarity of the 7th house, and so on and so forth. So for you, we're looking at Gemini in your second house. So Mercury rules communication. So we're talking about communication based on the second house, right? Because this is where Gemini is for you. So what are we talking about with the second house? Because normally you rule the second house, right? So we're talking about your personal feelings about yourself, your value, your self-worth, okay? Based on how you feel about yourself and based on how others treat you will tell you what your value is and your self-worth. And that tells you based on, for example, if I came over to you and I was just talking rude to you and you allowed it, based on your value and your self-worth about yourself, that means that, you don't have much value or self-worth if you allow me to keep talking to you disrespectfully, right? So it's based on how you allow other people to treat you, which is a direct reflection of how you feel about yourself. So your self-value, your self-worth. It also deals with your money-making potential. Now, the 10th house is the house of career. That talks about what you do to make money. But how much money you make doing what you do is the second house. So we're talking about your personal value, your personal worth. We're talking about your money making opportunities. We're also talking about your physical possessions. Okay. And we're also talking about real estate in certain cases here. All right. So the opposite polarity of the second house is the 8th house. That is where Sagittarius is. Now, Sagittarius rules your spiritual religious beliefs. It rules your philosophies on life, how you feel about things, the way you think about things. Sagittarius also rules higher education. Okay. So it rules optimism, looking at the glass half full, things like that. So when we're talking about the 8th house here, we're looking at those situations in reference to other people's money. So the first house deals with your money making potential. The 8th house deals with shared resources or shared income, or the money making potential of you combined with someone else. Okay. The second house deals with your personal feelings about yourself, your self-value, your self-worth, and how you feel about yourself. The 8th house deals with the hidden feelings and emotions of others and how they feel about you. Okay, so this is how you feel about yourself, and this is how others feel about you, or how you feel about others. This deals with other people's property. So other people's property and other people's money, talk about inheritances. When someone passes away and they leave you something. Okay, we're talking about that. So we're talking about wills and estates. We're also talking about, in reference to money, taxes. Okay, other people's money. You have to pay taxes on that. So we're dealing with the energies of the second house for Gemini. Okay, for Mercury retrograde, and we're dealing with the 8th house energies for the Sagittarius lunar eclipse. Now, Sagittarius and Gemini are opposite polarity, so they have, with any opposite polarity, there are things that are similar and common. Okay, so when we talk about Gemini, we're talking about your formative years of education. So your pre-K, your pre-K, your grade school, your junior high, your high school, and your local college. But when we talk about Sagittarius, for you, it's in the 8th house. We're talking about higher education, like your master's degrees, your PhDs. When we talk about writing, because we talk about communication, Mercury rules communication. It's a form of writing. All right, so say we talk about writing. So you may have an author who writes, because we're dealing with grade school and children, in your formative years, you can have a writer or a teacher who teaches in grade school, elementary school, high school, junior high, or community college. Where here, if there was a teacher, this would be somebody who's teaches in the master's program or a PhD program. With Gemini here, we're talking about local travel. Okay, travel throughout, maybe say, for example, if you live in the U.S., travel throughout the U.S., that's local travel. Or it could be even smaller amount of travel. It could be, travel throughout your neighborhood. But when we're talking about the 8th house and we're talking about travel, we're talking about foreign travel, travel overseas, travel to another country. Okay, so this is how they are similar, but, opposite ends of the spectrum, so to speak. If we're talking about somebody who's doing publishing or writing, we're talking about someone who does publishing or writing about maybe the local environment, where you have someone here who does publishing and writing about foreign travel. Okay, so that's what we're talking about with the similarities and the differences. Now, when we talk about the second house, we are looking at the symbol. This symbol is a rune. It's one of the runes. Runes are a divination tool used with different symbols. Each symbol has a specific meaning. So this particular rune is called Isa. It's spelled I-S-A, but it's spelled, the pronunciation is E-S-A. So here's Isa. So hopefully you can read that. That tells you the meaning of Isa, the theme behind it, some key words that are used to describe the symbol. All right, so I'll read that to you. You can pause that and read it for yourself. Ice, stillness, impasse. immutable, slow to change, solidness, conservative. Return to what was, stop changes, holding one's ground, avert a disaster. No movement until the ice melts. What was before and will be after. Timeless stability. Ice versus fire. So ice is representative of nothingness versus fire, which is all about creation and life. Imperceptible movement, glacier pace. Nature reclaiming human efforts, slow to change, stubborn, resistant, strong will. And then we have that clarified with the Ace of Cups. So for some of you, when we're talking about the second house, we're talking about possessions. Okay, so some of you could be very stubborn, or because this energy talks about somebody who's resistant to change, someone who's very stubborn, someone who doesn't want to go anywhere. This could be like the Knight of Pentacles in reverse energy, very stubborn energy, not going anywhere, not going to move, not going to budge, that type of energy. All right. This could also be looked at as holding your ground on something as well. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be stubborn, but it could be that. But it's basically no movement, just standing here in your ground, standing your ground on what it is, and that's that. Not changing your views about something, right? And it could be with the Ace of Cups, it could be your views about love. Because again, you know, the second house deals with views of self-worth, okay? Self-value. So maybe in your formative years as a child, maybe you didn't get a lot of emotional nourishment as a child. So love wasn't an issue. Or maybe you grew up in an environment where you had a parent or a guardian who was very stern. Someone who's very stubborn, somebody who's not open to love or open to change. And so as an adult, or so as a child, you developed ideologies about what love is, right? So now when we go towards, when we look at the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, we're looking at the rune called Iwaz. It's spelled E-I-W-A-Z. I'm sorry, E-I-H-W-A-Z. Here's Iwaz. So you may want to pause that and check that out. So it's about defense, enlightenment, protection, divination, spiritual wisdom, protection and self-defense, seeking ancient wisdom, vision questing, developing inner strength, the wisdom of the ancients, physical death and spiritual rebirth, tree of life, transcending the physical plane, enlightened creativity, connection to past lives, communications with ancestors, spiritual strength. Now, this is in your 8th house. So a lot of what we talked about has to do with the 8th house, communication with ancestors. The 8th house rules psychic abilities. It rules the occult. All right. So spiritual rebirth is one of the things mentioned here, and Pluto rules death and rebirth. Okay. And it also rules spiritual death and spiritual rebirth as well. So we're dealing with that in the 8th house, and then we have that clarified with the 4 of Wands. So what I'm feeling here is what's going on is for some of you, you may be changing your views and ideas about love, okay, and relationships. Maybe you were raised in an environment where you grew up around men who were the strong, silent type. They did not express verbally their love, or they didn't hug and kiss you as a kid, but they provided for you. Maybe you grew up in an environment here, because we're dealing with the 2nd house, where, you know, love is all about who can provide you the best material possessions. Okay. And that is what, you know, maybe you had a family member who they bought you everything, but they didn't really show you any physical, you know, love, like hugs or kisses, but they would buy you anything that you wanted, and you wanted for nothing in the material realm. So maybe that is now as an adult how you equate love. So you may be in a situation where you have grown up, now you have a wife, and you know, you buy your wife everything, but your wife is you know, to the point where she's frustrated because she can't get you to actually tell her you love her. She can't get you to spend quality time with her. When she asks you for quality time, you give her money. When she wants to cuddle and hug after you guys are intimate, that's something that you are not interested in. When she wants to hold your hand, that's something that's uncomfortable for you. Like when she shows you affection, that might be something that you're not comfortable with. So for some of you, you could be looking at why you feel this way. So your wife could be complaining. This is just an example, okay, of how these energies are working together. Doesn't mean it's your situation, just an example. What you can do is apply your situation to what I'm explaining. So this could be the case here. So, maybe your relationship is falling apart because your wife is wanting affection and that's not your love language. Your love language is for you to buy, to give. All right. And then we also deal with possessions. So sometimes people look at other people as possessions. That is known as a negative characteristic trait of Taurus. Sometimes they can be very possessive of their family members and their friends, and look at them as possessions and not as people who have their own mind and right to do what they want. So, and that's the opposite polarity of the eighth house, where you have people who are obsessed. Okay. So possession is in the second house. Obsession is in the eighth house. So that's one scenario of what you might be dealing with in this scenario, but it could just be about self-worth and how you were taught to love. And maybe the way that you were taught to love is totally different than what you are seeing the world to be as an adult. And so for some of you, you want happiness in your life, but because you were taught to be a player or a playette throughout your life and to collect money, you may have passed up some opportunities to connect with someone who really cared about you, right? And who may have wanted to be with you. Some of you, you may not get with a person unless, you may not consider marrying a person unless they're able to provide for you. Okay? That might be, what your love, or as far as what you're going to give in a relationship or you being married, is contingent upon, well, can you buy me a house? Do I need to work? Because I don't want to work. If I'm going to get married, I don't want to work. I want to be provided for, else I just don't want to be married. That may be how some women feel, right? Not saying that's right or wrong, but that's how some people feel. And there are some men on the opposite spectrum here where they say, okay, I don't want my wife to work. I'll provide for her. But sometimes what happens is when you're in a position where you're providing for someone or you're being provided for, people can look at you as, okay, well, I'm providing for you, so you belong to me. You're mine. And they treat this person as a possession as opposed to being treated as a human being. So there could be relationships that are breaking up and splitting up, marriages with the Four of Wands that are breaking up and splitting up, or there are problems within the marriage or the relationship because somebody is very stubborn in how they show love, or somebody is in a situation where they meet somebody that they really want to be with, but because they don't want to end their player ways, they pass up this person. So what could be going on is hidden feelings and emotions are the eighth house. So this person could be looking at this situation like, damn, this was somebody I could have had an ideal marriage with, or somebody I wanted to be with, but because I didn't want to give up my player ways, I was stubborn about giving up my player ways, I missed out. Or for some of you, it could be that you're in a marriage that is loveless and you're there because of finances and because you don't want to move out of the relationship for a relationship where, say you're in a marriage. For a lot of Tauruses, this is what I've been getting with the readings. You could be in a marriage and you're not happy in that marriage. You're in that marriage for material gain. Or not necessarily gain, but you're provided for, right? So you stay in the marriage because it's financially pleasing for you. The bills are paid. You don't got to worry about nothing. You got money in your account. And then say for whatever reason you stepped out and met someone else, and you actually have feelings for this other person, but because this other person doesn't have the money to provide for you like the person you're with, you may decide to pass that person up that you have feelings for because you want financial stability. So now some of you may be feeling regret, and that's what this lunar energy is about, your hidden feelings and your emotions. And for some of you, you're feeling regret because you let a situation end. For others of you, it could be about family members who you loved and never really showed any real emotion to, and these family members may have passed away. because the Four of Wands also talks about family. It doesn't just talk about the lovers, but it also talks about the family. It talks about weddings. It talks about funerals. It talks about baby showers. It talks about birthday parties. So these types of festivities, where it looks like, especially with physical death and spiritual rebirth, in the eighth house, maybe you had some hidden feelings or emotions about this, or maybe someone passed away, and now as a result of that, you may inherit a house, because the Four of Wands could be a house as well, right? And just remember, the second house deals with real estate as well. So this could have been from a family member who loved you, who left you a house or left you some property. So these are different scenarios that you may have to deal with as a Taurus, because of these energies. So what happens with the thought process, real quick? So since Mercury is here in the second house, the opposite energy is Sagittarius in the eighth house. So this is how our thought processes normally work. Things go into the logical mind. Mercury rules the logical mind. Mercury does not rule feelings. It rules the facts and the logic behind the situation. So say you're in a relationship like I just described. The facts is that you're in a relationship, but say you don't love this person anymore and you guys split up, or you break up or what have you, or this person doesn't love you. Either way, Mercury is going to look at it as, okay, I'm no longer with this person. That's a fact. That's a statement. That's the logical aspect of it. Mercury is not going to look at it, oh, I'm not with this person because I don't love them anymore, or I love somebody else. It has nothing to do with feeling. Mercury does nothing with feelings. It's all communication only. Okay? So here is where the logical mind is saying, okay, this is what, is done. Now, if you still have some emotional attachment to it, that means that you haven't learned the lesson. Wisdom is what rules Sagittarius. And the only way to get wisdom is to go through an experience and then learn from it. That's where wisdom comes from. It's one thing to go to an experience, but to gain wisdom from it, you have to learn from it. So some of us are not able to learn from some situations that we've been in with people and relationships because of the fact that we're still harboring emotions behind it. So what happens is when you're still harboring emotions behind a situation that's stopping you from ascending to your better self, when Mercury goes into retrograde, what it does is it goes in and it says, okay, we're going to clean out this closet. We're going to get out all of this logical stuff, all these facts, and we're going to process them and send them up to the higher mind, because you should have learned from these things. Well, there are some things that you can't get out of the closet. Maybe the chest is too heavy. You can't get it out because there's a lot of emotion attached to it. So what Mercury is going to do is, for the things that have a lot of emotion attached to it that need to come out of this closet, it's going to put it to the forefront of your mind. So what's going to happen is, with Mercury retrograde being from May 29th through June 22nd, whatever comes to your mind the most in reference to these things are what Mercury wants you to deal with. Okay, so you have to deal with the emotions behind it. So you'll have to look at it like, okay, well, what was my part that I played in it? That's how you learn from a situation. What part did I play in it? What could I have done differently? If there was nothing you could have done differently, then you can chalk it up as, okay, it was not my fault. There was nothing I could have done differently. I have to accept that and move on. So that's the learning process. So then it takes that heavy chest, it's emptied out of emotion, and now it's put into the higher mind, because you've learned from it. You've gained wisdom from it, right? So that's what we're looking at. So for some of you, you have not dealt with the emotional piece of it. So whatever Mercury brings to the forefront of your mind during this retrograde time frame, that's what you're going to need to focus on, and you're going to need to come to conclusion with that. Now, for some of you, the resolution or the issue could be with someone who passed away, okay, because we're dealing with the eighth house, right? And we're dealing with the energies of physical death and spiritual rebirth. So, and this could be a family member with the Four of Wands. So what you may want to do is, if that person is no longer alive, like say you want to apologize or say you want to vent to them, but they're no longer here. What you can do is, on the night of the lunar eclipse, which is May 26th, you can write out your feelings to this person. You can write it out before then, but you can write out your feelings, exactly what you want to say and how you want to say it, right? And what you can do is, the night of the lunar eclipse, you can go outside, call on your ancestors, your spirit guides, God, Jehovah, Jesus, whomever you believe in, and ask them to tell them, look, I want to read this letter to such and such. Can you please call them in? And you call that person's name and you read the letter. Okay? You ask your ancestor to call the spirit of this person. So you know, hey, benevolent spirit guides, benevolent ancestors, benevolent guardian angels, can you call the spirit of, and you say their name. I have a message for you. It is, and you say your name. And then you read what it is that you wrote. And then what you do is you burn it. Because, you know, just because we're not in a physical spirit, I mean, in a physical body, doesn't mean that we're still not here. So some of you have a lot of unresolved pain and conflict in reference to people who've passed away that you have bottled up inside of you, and you feel like, well, damn, they're not here anymore, so I can't say, I can't do. So you feel like you're trapped with that emotion. That is a way to let that out. Okay, so you're not trapped. So for those of you who the people are still alive, if you did them wrong and you want to apologize, and you know they say, okay, kiss my ass, then okay, at least you apologize, and as long as you were sincere about it, then cool. What happens is sometimes with Mercury retrograde, people come back into your life because they're on your mind, but people don't understand why these people are on your mind. You automatically are thinking, okay, this person's on my mind. Let me call them and see what's up and let's get back together. But there's a reason why you two split up. And so what happens is you get back together with the Mercury retrograde. And then, you know, after the Mercury retrograde energy is clear, you may be like, damn, why'd I get back with this person in the first place? They still the same. Ain't nothing changed. I don't know what I was thinking. And that's why Mercury retrograde is so infamous. So it's very important that if an ex comes back to you, sit down and have a conversation. Make sure this person acknowledges their part that they played in the demise of the connection, as well as you acknowledging your part. If it was no more than, damn, you know, this person was giving me red flags that they didn't want to be in a relationship with me exclusively. You know, they weren't returning my calls. They, every time we try to get together, they would stand me up, or, you know, whatever behavior they were exhibiting to let you know that, you know, you were not priority. Maybe you ignored that because you wanted the relationship to work out, and you're just like, okay, I got to work with this person's schedule. I got to, you know, that type of thing. Devaluing yourself, because the second house deals with value and self-worth of oneself, right? But some of you may have some hidden feelings and emotions about that you've not expressed to this person. So if they come back around and you have the opportunity to have a conversation, you can get out what you have to say. It doesn't mean that you have to get back with this person, but you can definitely bring closure. Okay. And the person who's apologizing, if somebody doesn't want to get back with you, they don't have to. You know, if you apologize to them and they say, okay, thank you, but, you know, I appreciate you apologizing, but I feel like I've learned a lot from this connection, and I feel like I want to move on. You have to accept that. That's just the reality of the situation. So these are some of the things that you may be dealing with. It could be family members who've passed away. It could be lovers, you know, that you may regret that you didn't connect with. Like I said, I get player energy for some of you, where you were a player, and then now that, you know, you're looking back at it, some of you may be feeling like you want to connect with someone, and you had a connection with someone, but now that person is no longer around or no longer available, and you're feeling a certain way about it. You know, these are some of the things you may experience, and those are some suggestions of what you could do. So let me give you, let's pull something that can let's pull some energies and see how you could handle the situation. And I did not do that for Pisces, and I did not do that for Aquarius, this step here. So I do apologize for Pisces and Aquarius. You are the only two that I did not do this for. So what energies does the Taurus person need to embody in order to get through this situation, should they be experiencing it? Okay, Capricorn, the boss. So you need to boss up. Okay, so bossing up talks about being serious about a situation. So for, again, some of you were players. All right, so you need to boss up. Some of you, you know, maybe somebody didn't want to be with you because you're not financially stable. It may not be about them being materialistic. It could just be, damn, you can't even provide a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of for yourself. So how do you expect to be in a relationship with a grown man or a grown woman when you can't provide for yourself? So some of you need to boss up. Get on your ambition, be ambitious, be realistic, be structured, traditional. You know, for some of you who didn't believe in marriage, you were in that player energy, and then you met someone who wanted marriage, or someone you could settle down with, and maybe you decided you prefer to be a player, and so now you could be missing that person, right? So being wise, enduring, accomplished, a badass, being majestic, competent, prepared, down to earth, corporate, reserved, rigid, disciplined. So this is all about someone stepping up and taking responsibility, okay, for your actions and the things that you've done or the things that you didn't do. So for some of you, this is what you're going to end up having to do. You're going to have to boss up in some way, shape, or form by looking at the part you played in the situation, which is what I described earlier, looking at the part you played, accepting it for what it was, looking at what you could have done differently, and then turning that into a tool to learn from. So therefore, it turns into wisdom. So moving forward, you know what to do and what not to do in reference to a situation similar to this. All right. So Taurus, that is what I got for you for the Mercury retrograde Sagittarius lunar eclipse. Oh, I forgot to tell you about the lunar eclipse part. So with the lunar eclipses are all about eclipsing negative energy, emotions and feelings that you still have bottled up about the situation that you need to release. That is the purpose of lunar eclipses, just in full moons as well. Okay, so they're all about the emotions and the feelings, and it gives you the opportunity to release negative emotions and negative feelings. So this is why you write that letter, especially if it's to someone that you can't communicate with. You can even do this if their person is alive and maybe you just don't know where they are, or maybe they just blocked your ass and don't want to talk to you, or you blocked them and you don't want to talk to them, but at the same time you do want to write whatever it is you feel about the situation. And you could feel any type of way, but you write it down. You call on your spirit guides or your God, and you ask to call on the essence, the spirit guides or gods for that person. You call that person's name. You say who you are. You read it at the night of the Sagittarius lunar eclipse, and then after you read it, you burn it. Right? So that's for some of you who are still dealing, because some of you are going to be dealing with a lot of guilt. Some of you are dealing with some guilt and some regret. All right, and that for some of you, it's tearing you apart. So that is a way that you can help to release that, okay? So use the lunar eclipse as a way to release any emotions or feelings that you have about something that you've not dealt with. Use that energy, because what happens is it clears it out so that when the solar eclipse comes 2 weeks later, now you're ripe with creativity, because the moon deals with creativity. And so now you're right with creativity. Your intuition will be on point because it's not being pulled by stuff that's all, stuck in the closet and it's got cobwebs that you haven't dealt with. Everything is fresh and new. All right. So again, that's what I got for you, Taurus. So if this resonated in any way, please click the like button. If you would like a personal, my information is in the box below. If you haven't subscribed, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Make sure you check out your other placements as well, because some of you, if you're dealing with some rougher situations and you need more information to put the pieces together to understand things in a more complete manner, maybe you need to check out some of your other placements as well, so that, in case you have a couple of issues that you need to deal with for this lunar eclipse energy to get rid of, that you take the opportunity to get rid of and clear your emotional palette. Okay, so that you can bring in positive things. All right, we want positive things. So I will see you guys in the next reading. I hope that this resonated in some way or you were able to take something out of it. Thank you for checking out the video.